All right. Mic check. I'm good. So I'm Ceron. Ceron, CWB Association Welding podcast. Podcast. Today we have a really cool guest. Welding podcast.
The show is about to begin.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the CWB Association podcast. My name is Ceron, and as always, I'm out there digging and grinding and trying to find the best stories I can find for you. This episode is another continuation of the fantastic pieces that we're putting together for Black History Month here, coming up with 4 episodes. Today we have Mohamed Sookwa, who works at CWB, to tell you about his fantastic story. And the guy's a great guy. He's kind of a legend in these parts, and I've known him for a long time. So, Mo, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm good. Thanks for the intro there, bro. A legend, eh?
Well, you've been around a long time, and I've been seeing you here and there, up and down for probably a decade now.
Yeah.
Now,
Sure.
let's talk about Mo. For people that don't know, who you are, what do you do at CWB? What's your official job?
My official job is really leading our internal and training and development, right, for new hires and also for existing staff.
And when you talk about training of internal development for staff, training what? What do you training how to do the paperwork, or training how to do audits, or training how to weld? I don't know. What is it you train?
Right. So primarily, I started off in this role working with our certification team. So basically the CSRs, or the reps as we call them.
Mm-hmm.
So we've designed a training program for new hires coming into this role so that they can prepare and be able to take on the role, executing, auditing and water testing and other certification services that we provide to our clients.
Cool. All right. So we'll get to that in the second half. Specifically, we'll break that down. But let's find out a little bit about who you are, because I'm very interested to learn more about you, Mo. We always have a great time whenever we hang out. We always have good stories. And you're a welder by trade, which is something that connects us on another level. Not very many people at CWB are welders, which is shocking to a lot of people, because it's like the Canadian Welding Bureau would be full of welders, but there's very few of us. There's only a handful of us, right? And even less that are Red Seals that actually did it for a living for the long haul. So let's start from the beginning. Where were you born? Where do you call home?
Guyana.
All right.
Yeah.
So you were born in Guyana. Where in Guyana?
So Guyana has 3 counties. I was born in the county of Berbice,
Okay.
the eastern part of Guyana. And for those who don't know where Guyana is, I find it hard people not to know these days because of the oil boom that they have.
Mm-hmm.
But it's located in South America, bordering Brazil and Venezuela. And interestingly enough, Max, it's the only South American country where the official language is English.
Yep. Yeah, I know, because I've asked you before if you can speak Spanish, and
Nope, not
nope. So being born in Guyana, you're born there. It's almost like a solitary country within South America, because it's got its own system, its own money. It's kind of got a little bit different thing going on. What did your family do? What did your mom and dad do for a living?
Well, my dad was paralyzed, so he couldn't work. He had stroke when I was 4 years old, so he wasn't working. My mom was the breadwinner, and she, before she did 2 jobs. One, she was working in the cane fields
Mm-hmm.
as a laborer, and then after that, she started selling things like popsicles and things like that at the schools, and that was pretty much how she made a living.
Yeah, and what happened to your dad? He had a stroke when you were 4.
He had a stroke, and he lived for 10 years after that, and then he passed away.
And what did he do before he had the stroke, or was the stroke from work?
My dad was a tailor,
Okay.
but then he ended up running a bar. So, he was partying a bit, right? I guess.
Yeah, that's hard on the body. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then how did, a family with a disabled father, a mom working whatever jobs she could to get ahead, how many brothers and sisters you got?
We were 7 of us.
Okay. So then how did you guys get to Canada? When and who? Did all of you come? Some of you come? Who, like, what was the process there?
Yeah, my eldest sister came first, and then she lived here for maybe close to 15 years. And then, she sponsored us after my dad passed away. And that's how we came.
And what did your sister do here, or does she do here?
She was in administrative type of work. And now I think and eventually she started her own business and so on.
So how old were you when you got on that plane to come to Canada?
I was 17.
17. And
17.
What did you think before you came to Canada you were getting into? As a 17-year-old, you got TV, you got music, you know what's up. You speak English. You're in a English-speaking country. You had an idea of what you were going into. And did you come into the GTA?
No, I actually, we migrated to Montreal.
Okay, so you came into Montreal, so French speaking. And what did you think it was going to be like? What was the dream?
Max, it was such a surreal feeling. First of all, we didn't have TV. And so leaving Guyana was something that everyone was aspiring to. Everyone wanted, because politically, economically, there were no opportunities. So everyone was like one foot in Guyana and the other foot stretching to, abroad, right?
Yeah.
Mostly United States and Canada. So, the excitement was, hey, I'm getting to leave this place, because I dropped out of high school, and then I did tailoring for a little bit. And then I started, kind of running a business for the guy who taught me tailoring. That didn't work out. So I ended up doing one of the most, I would say, embarrassing jobs in my life, which was selling bread and pastries, walking house to house, right? And when I found out that we got our visa to come to Canada, it was like winning a lottery, or even, something even more rewarding than that. It's hard to describe the feeling. So there weren't any type of expectation except, hey, I'm getting to leave this place. I'm going to a place that will offer me a better life, basically.
Yeah. Whatever that is, it's going to be something.
So whatever that is, we'll find out, right? Yeah.
And then you and the remaining family load up on the plane. And what time of year was it?
That was March the 11th, 1986.
So March the 11th, 1986, it's springtime. It's Montreal, still kind of chilly. And I'm sure for you guys, you thought it was real cold, but not so bad.
Put it this way.
Yeah.
We flew into Pearson.
Okay.
I don't know if it was called Pearson at that time. We were fleeing to Toronto Airport. And then we had to change terminals. We all were dressed in summer attire. It was freezing, to say the least, right? So that was a wake-up call right away.
Yeah.
And then when we went to Montreal, most people would understand who probably lived in Montreal or visited there. We have a lot more snow in Montreal than you would ever have in Toronto. So there was a pile of snow. Like hills and hills of snow. But it didn't bother anyone, right? We were just so happy to be here.
Yeah.
We didn't even realize we were cold, I guess.
And what were those first impressions like for you, your family, your mom? What were the thoughts when you first finally got to your sister's house and trying to start figuring out what to do?
It was very foggy. I can't recall any particular thought.
Yeah.
But we were here, right? We were here. We were safe. We had our whole life ahead of us to make a difference, right? And so whatever comes next is going to come next, right?
Yeah.
And, with most immigrants, moving to a new country, it's a challenge, right? And it's a lot of a lot of things that you don't really cater for, you don't understand. You have to experience it, right? So yeah, it was rocky at first. Of course, it was very rocky. My family got split up, right? That was the biggest challenge because we all couldn't stay in one house. So we had to split up. So right away, the family got split up, and we were a tight knit family. So that was a big challenge there. And then, for me, I had to start working because now I'm going to be the breadwinner.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, for a 17-year-old kid in Canada, it's pretty easy to get a job. Like, I mean, it's prime time, like it's most 17-year-old healthy people that hit the street looking for work are going to find something, So, what was that first job out of the gate?
Not for me, Max.
No,
I tell you what, I did get a job. I just couldn't hold a job for more than 2 days. Right. The first job I got was in a jewelry company where, they kind of forge the jewelry. And then my job was to kind of take those pieces and bust it on a sander or grinder.
Mm-hmm.
And I was scared of the tool of the equipment. And the guy fired me. He says, "What are you, a glass? Piece of glass, you're fragile." So I lost that job in 2 days. 2 days I was gone. Then I ended up working in a custom wood place. We're making furniture or something. And that one was like 2 weeks.
So you didn't like the tools, it sounds like.
Man, yeah, I was scared of tools. Like, I was useless with my hand except on a sewing machine,
mm-hmm.
right? Because my parents never really wanted us to, take a hammer and nail a picket fence or whatever. They were scared that, you're going to get hurt, right?
Well, in our countries, too, those are seen as like very low jobs, construction, it's like if you can't do anything else, it's like embarrassing,
Yeah, that stigma definitely is there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it used to be there. It's changed
Used to
now.
be, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, keeping a job was one of my biggest challenges, and it was very depressing because we ended up living in a 1-bedroom apartment, and it was like, 5-6 people, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty tough.
Yeah.
And my mom couldn't go out to work, right? She didn't have any education. She couldn't speak English, so that people could understand. Because if you understand Guyana, we have patois, right? English, like Jamaican, so sort of. So for her to go out and get a job was almost impossible. So she started, like babysitting and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like being in Montreal made it harder because it was more French speaking? So you also didn't have that language?
Yeah, the language barrier definitely was one of the biggest challenges, I would say. And that's one of the reasons why I eventually left after 12 years and moved to Ontario.
Yeah, because when I made the statement about getting a job as a 17-year-old, I was thinking about where I was when I was 17, because we're about the same age. So, here in Saskatchewan in the West, at 17 years old, there was work literally anywhere. Like, I could just walk from street to street to find a good job.
Don't get me wrong. There was work.
Just not for you.
You have to be able to do the work, right? Because I was living in the island of Montreal. And, you could speak English and get away with it there. There's not too many issues with that, especially for factory jobs, right?
Yeah.
So, like the language didn't affect that. Later on, as you will see, the language did become a big factor.
So then what did Mo do? You're getting frustrated. You're like, why can't I hold on to these jobs? I don't seem to have the skills that I need. You're too old for high school. You're in a living accommodation that is making it tough. You're not sleeping well. You don't feel like you're doing a good job of keeping the family, in the right place to chase the dream. The dream is kind of a bit of a nightmare right now, So what's the next step for you?
Well, it's just keep trying, man. Just keep trying. I never give up. I'm not a type that gives up. So yeah, eventually I did get a job, and I was able to hold that job for 2.5 years.
Good. What was the job? What were you doing?
So I ended up working in a Chesterfield, right? Making furniture, my job was really to glue the cushions together, right? Yeah, that's what I did for 2.5 years. But then, I always felt that I had more to offer, right? That I'm better. I don't like to use the word better. I don't think it's a good word in this context, but
Like your
I have
skills
more to
were
offer.
better
Right.
utilized somewhere else. Yeah.
Right. So I decided to do something about it, right? And that's when I actually heard about welding, and that's how I got into welding. So as the story continues, I had a friend who was going to go into machining, and he talked about welding and how much money this street offers, and there was always jobs and stuff like that, and that's all I wanted to hear: money and job, right? So gung ho, I went to human resources and I said to them, "Listen, I'm 19 years old or whatever, and I'd like to take a trade." And they're like, "But why? You have a job, you're making decent money." So I had to sell it to them about, I have more to offer and blah, 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 blah. I did all my research before and about the program and stuff like that. So I was well equipped, and they approved it, right? So now I would be receiving an income while going to school because I was a breadwinner.
Yeah,
So
you go on EI, yeah.
yeah, exactly. I went to EI, went to
Although back
school,
then it was
and
called UI back then.
I guess yes.
It was called unemployment insurance back
unemployment
then.
insurance. Yes. So this is where the fun begins, Max. Went to the school. The first thing they taught us, as you would know, is health and safety. And I'm like, did I just sign my death warrant? What the heck?
The most dangerous trade.
Yeah. They start talking about burns and electrocution and all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm trapped. I can't quit now because I'm going to lose EI. I don't have a job to go to, right? So, yeah, I feel trapped. But I went, and then after a couple of days, I'm like, wow, this is not so bad. I started liking it. And and surprisingly, I was good at it. I was good at it, yeah. So yeah, we ended up doing that, and I did complete the course after a year.
So it was a 1-year course, and what did you come out with after that 1 year?
It's called a DEP, a diploma or something, whatever. I forget what it's called. It's a French acronym. But a vocational certificate, if you will, in welding, I think. It's the closest explanation I can think of.
And when you were done that 1-year program, which is, like all 1-year programs, it'll be like MIG, stick, a little bit of TIG, a couple CWB tickets, and a little bit of fabrication blueprint reading, math and stuff like that. Right. That's your standard 1-year program. Did you go back to the furniture company and say, now I'm a welder, where's my job?
It wasn't metal, right? It was all wood.
Yeah.
So, what happened next was we found ourselves in this recession, right? This was in 1989.
Right.
Okay. So I couldn't land a job, right? I was a good welder, but I couldn't handle the stress of testing, right? So I would go to a job. So the first opportunity I actually had was Dominion Bridge.
Oh, my dad worked at Dominion Bridge.
Yeah. I mean, and that was like, as a welder, that's where you want to be to start your career.
Like welding, the biggest shops in Canada,
Exactly. And so I was able to pass all of the practical tests except a vertical up, right? And I didn't get the job. And so I ended up working in another factory, okay? So this factory was the next street over where my apartment was. And it was a sweater factory. Do you know what my job was, Max?
Folding sweaters.
No, that would have been okay. I don't know if that would have been okay. But my job was to cut off the excess threads. The threads.
Oh, the ones that sticking out, yeah.
Yeah. Man, I tell you, that was one of the most depressing times in my life.
Yeah.
Right? Because here I'm thinking, I took a step in the right direction.
I went to school. Yeah.
I went to school, and now I'm back doing something that's worse than I was doing in a furniture company, right? Making less money,
Mm.
right? But again, you got to pay the bills. You do what you got to do. But then I never stopped. The thing is, I never give up. I'm not a type that gives up. I don't think I ever give up. So I kept applying for welding jobs, and then there was one place they were making overhead cranes, right? So they would take these I-beams and they'll splice them and do the stuff. So it was so I went there for the test, and again the test was a vertical up, right?
Yeah.
So I struggled, and again I don't give up. I'm a very persistent guy, right? And eventually, after about an hour, I nailed it.
Yeah.
So the guy came to me and he said, listen, I like your attitude. I like your persistence. I'm going to hire you. Right? I was making $5.50 an hour at that time at that sweater place I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
He says, okay, I'm going to hire you, but your starting rate is going to be $5 an hour. And like I mentioned earlier, this sweater place was a street away, a 2-minute walk. This job, I had to take 2 buses and walk about half a mile. But I took it because of the experience, right?
Yeah.
And although it didn't last too long, he paid me $5 an hour. I was doing open routes, and all that stuff, but he wanted production. And he thought I wasn't fast enough. So again, I lost another job, right?
But now you had a little bit more time on the tools now, right? You got some experience.
Yes. I can use it now. I'm pretty good now, right? I'm pretty good. Yeah, and the struggle continued, and I struggled a lot in staying in welding. To be honest with you, I don't know if we'll save this for later on, but I'd like to tell you how I actually, got to where I am right now. But I'll let you lead the discussion.
Thank you for that. So you get fired from the crane facility for being too slow, which is something I hear a lot. I came from manufacturing. I worked in manufacturing, and being good and being quick are two mutually exclusive but yet conditionally important things, which means that you got to be able to do both of them, but they both got to be good, but they can't make the other one be worse, which is really hard to do, right? It takes time. Now, I feel at this point things are still kind of bleak, like years have gone by. So now you have younger siblings that are probably also coming up. They're probably also looking to go to school, maybe college, Are you still in the 1-bedroom with everybody, or
No.
people are starting to get spread out?
Right. At this time, my one of my sister, she was living with my elder sister, the one that sponsored us.
Mm-hmm.
My other sister, and they're all older than me. I'm the second to last. She eventually moved out. So it was me, my younger brother, and my mom.
Okay.
We ended up renting a 2-bedroom apartment. We had we had the TV, bro. We had, those TV where it's a furniture,
Yeah.
TV.
It's like built into the shelf.
There we go. So we had all of that. We're pretty set up, right? We're living the life now.
Mm-hmm.
We're living the life now.
And then what's the next job? Where do you go from there? Are you thinking at this point, Mo, that you're done with welding? Are you like, maybe this isn't for me, or what were you thinking?
No, I wasn't giving up on welding. It's the only thing that I had, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm realizing that I need to do more. So I kept, looking for welding jobs, and at one point in time, I left it. And one of my sisters, that time her fiance owned a store, an electronics store. So actually, while I was going to school in welding, I was working there part-time.
Part-time,
right?
yeah.
Supplement the EI. But then eventually I started working there full-time, right? And then something happened that actually changed a lot. So, and it's a perfect piece to talk.
Segue. Yeah.
Yeah, especially when we are talking about, Black History Month and all that stuff, right? That's coming up. So in Montreal, there is this union, Local 271 Boilermakers, and one of the gentlemen who sadly he passed away a few months ago. His name is Thomas. He started a movement because what he realized and that there were not too many minorities, people of color, working. And so he started something that's called a Minority Apprenticeship Project, right? MAP. And the friend of mine who I mentioned earlier that took machining, right? His father ended up meeting Thomas, someone else, and introduced me to this association. And I became one of the first clients, right? So I got in. Here's where Dominion Bridge come back. I ended up getting a job working for Dominion Bridge, but not as a welder. So what happened, it was in 1990, August, the hottest month. They were doing some fiberglass work, this big docking system up in this roof, high up. No one wanted to take the job, right? So in order for me to get into the union, and you would probably know this, you have to have a company that would sponsor you for X amount of hours or whatever. So Dominion Bridge, they were looking for anyone that could breathe, right? So I got in there, and that's how I joined the Boilermakers. And I worked there, and a few shutdowns here and there. I ended up, the project went well. I ended up making the newspapers and all of that stuff. And then was back to the electronics store again.
Well, really? You didn't stay on with the union? They didn't keep you on?
It was seasonal work, right?
Right.
It was seasonal work. It was mostly shutdowns, all refineries,
permit work.
Plants. Yes, exactly. And so I continue with that. And, as an apprentice, you get the last pick. So most of it was, night shifts. In remote areas, I didn't have a car. So the same gentleman, Thomas, someone I wouldn't forget, would actually arrange to, pick me up at some point and then drop me up, right? Just to give me that opportunity, right? And that worked out. I made some good money, Max. It was
union money is always different than a lot of people are expecting. It's tough to get into some unions. Boilermakers one of the toughest ones to get into for full-time work. There is lots of permits floating around every year, like people know, but they're usually considered one of the tougher unions to get one of the steady eddies, right?
Yeah.
So you're laid off basically. There's no more work. The permit's done. You're back at the electronics shop, but now you kind of got a taste for the paycheck, a taste for the work. Well, what's the next step for you?
Well, during that time, I was still a member of the union.
Yeah.
So, you would call in, you would go to the union hall, and you would find out if there's any work and stuff. And I would get, a week here, a week there. And then, the journeymen, they kind of took a liking to me because I was, I was proving, I wanted to prove myself. I had good work ethics. And, sometimes they got mad at me because, they're like, slow down, whatever. But I was willing to do whatever they asked me to. And they said to me, they said, listen, if you really want to get like more work, you got to learn to do TIG welding and you got to learn to weld pipes.
Yeah.
Right. So I ended up going and applied for another welding program. And it was called the Ceron Institute at that time. I believe it was a pressure vessel or a pressure welding program. And so again, through EI, I got into the program. And then I think there was a week or just days before the program started, we got notification that the program is no longer available.
No, really?
Yeah. So during that time, everything works out, right? During that time, MAP, the same association I told you about, they had started a welding program for newcomers and minorities and stuff like that. So I told me to just go back into that program. So I ended up going there, and that's when I discovered my leadership qualities. I ended up being somewhat of a mentor for most of those guys, and
The fresh blood, yeah.
right, start teaching, show them what I knew, give them some guidance and stuff like that. Yeah, so and I did that for another year.
Now, were you, and this is maybe it was different with the unions then, but why didn't the Boilermakers just sign you up for their training program? The Boilermakers have a school too.
I don't know about that, but I can tell you that years after, they started a Boilermaker course, and I was selected as one of the first candidates.
Okay.
But at that time, I had decided to leave Montreal, so I didn't take it on.
So if I'm following the timeline here, you're about 2 year, 3, you're almost 4 years into welding. You're doing work with the Boilermakers. You're still part-timing when you're not on shutdowns or on job. You're now in the specialist course, learning how to TIG, and you've alluded a couple times that you had to make the move out of Montreal. Why and when did that happen?
Yeah. So before we get there,
okay,
after I finished
the MAP program,
which actually was a revelation in some ways, right? As I started loving teaching, I realized that I wanted to go to university and get higher education. And so, because one of the students was a very, very smart guy, and him and I did a lot of study work together. And then he told me that he was going to go to Concordia University, and I said, okay, yeah, I'm coming too, right? But what happened is just before I finished the course, I decided to go back home, Guyana, right?
Okay.
For some reason, I got homesick after 7 years in Canada. And ended up going there. And Max, I'll tell you not a word of a lie. I met a girl and got married to her. Never met her before, or no, I know of her, in 2 weeks. So I came back
with a wife.
No, I came back as a married man to Canada. Then I had to sponsor her. So university was now out of the question, right? I ended up getting a job at a sheet metal company. They were doing work for like Nortel, communication kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I long story short, I stayed there that's the longest I've ever kept a job. I believe it was almost 4 years.
Okay.
But in that time, there was a referendum happening. I had a newborn, a new kid, and I faced some challenges where the language was really something, and it was for me
starting to become a problem.
It became a problem, and the problem was I would apply for a job, a welding job. I would be interviewed speaking French during the interview, and invited to go meet the company. And as soon as I got there, the job was taking like 15, 20 minutes, right? It happened a few times, right? So there was that type of barrier, whatever you want to call it, that I had to contend with. At this point in time, I went back to school, and I had to do French and all 5 levels of it. So I was very conversational, right? In French. And but it didn't really help me that much, especially if I wanted to get a higher position or let's put it this way, if I wanted to really pursue a career in welding, right? Because my aim was never to remain a welder. We'll talk later on how that kind of started to work out. So I decided to leave Montreal. So I came here. I lived with my cousin for 3 months, and now it comes to what you were saying, man. There was so much work here. I was changing job like dirty laundry. Right?
And did you bring your wife and your kid with you right away, or not yet?
No.
Yeah.
they remained in Montreal, and I came here to get set up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my mother-in-law actually had just came. We had sponsored her. So actually, what I did is I drove from Montreal to the airport. And before I picked her up, I went for an interview, got the job, drove her back, and the next week I left and I came here. Yeah, I came here, and yeah, I'm crazy. When I want something, sometimes I don't even think. I don't think too much about what's gonna happen. I just figure out a way to get it. Then I figure out how I'm gonna get there, and where I'm gonna live and all that sort of stuff, right? So yeah, it worked out. And then I think 3 months later, I brought the family over here, and yeah, the rest is history, right?
So what kind of work did you get into in the GTA when you got there? Like, were you still boiler making? Did you join the hall in the area, or did you just get into the private sector and just work at shops?
Yeah, private sector. So the first job I got was working. This company did some stainless steel products. It was a TIG welder. It was a night job. And it was a problem because I was living with my cousin, right? And she has, insomnia and stuff like that, right? So, and the house is alarmed. So, I go back at night. As soon as I open the door, she would wake up and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up, I went to an agency and I got a job at a company called Orion Bus. So they build transit buses. And I was there as an agency worker, and eventually they hired me. Got into Teamsters Union, but then again, that didn't work out for long because seniority. When they get slow, the first guy out.
Yeah.
So I quickly got another job with a company that were making aluminum skids for the nuclear facility, and then when Orion Bus called me back, I kept both jobs because I didn't know which one to quit.
Yeah.
So what I did is I told the aluminum company, it was a very small company, maybe 4 of us. He had really liked me. And I said, if you want to, I got to make a choice. I got to quit a job.
Mm-hmm.
So he was just bringing in robotics into the equation, right?
Right.
So I said, if you get me to operate a robot, take the robotic course, I'll stay with you. And he's like, yeah, done. So he ended up going to ABB for a week and learn how to program robots and, manipulate them and all of that. But I never ended up using the robot. I had someone else doing it. I was, sometimes when you're too good as a welder, you get stuck.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's true.
So it's a blessing and it's also a curse sometimes. So the guy treated me really well. He was probably one of the best persons I've worked for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I stayed there for, I stayed there until they closed the company.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got into a stainless steel company that did pharmaceutical work. And a matter of fact, I went to the wrong address. I was going for another job. I went into the wrong address. An Englishman came out. He was married to a Guyanese. So he recognized my accent right away. And he said to me, man, can you weld stainless steel? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know, man, not much. He says, okay, come on and take a test. Gave me the test, passed it, hired me on the spot. I mean, $3 or $4 more an hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I worked there for a little bit. They laid me off. They laid me off because of some reasons. The boss was really a person that liked to shout at people.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't really appreciate that. So I said that to him. I said, Bob, I would really appreciate if you speak to me in a way that I speak to you. And he didn't really like that. So he told the foreman to lay me off. So anyway, foreman said to me, listen, call this company called O'Hara Technologies and tell them that you were welding the candy pan. They'll hire you on the spot because not too many people could have welded that, right? Because when they spun them, there was a lot of inconsistencies in the thickness. Mm-hmm. And we had to weld ribs inside. So sometimes you're dealing with like 30 gauge all the way down to less. And so you really had to be good. So I called the company and they said they weren't hiring. And I said, you know what? I was welding the candy pan. They said, come on in. And, they hired me. Meanwhile, my goal, my aim was always to join the CWB group.
Really?
That was my goal.
How
right?
did that get on your radar at all?
Right. So that happened when I did the first year of welding. The last thing that you do was to do, like you said, the CWB test. So I liked welding. I was good at it, but I didn't see it as something that I wanted to do for a long time. So I was considering, maybe start my own company in welding, things like that, right?
Yeah.
Then this gentleman walked in on test day. And man, this guy was like, ooh, everyone was like almost bound to this guy, right? and I'm like, okay, that's the job I want. So that was the first time I kind of found out about CWB and about inspector. But they're not really, they're inspectors, but not inspectors. They're more than that, right? And I'm like, okay, that's it. It took me 17 years later, but that was how it started.
All right. Well, this is a perfect time to take the break then. We'll take our break for our sponsors and our commercials here, and then we'll be back with the CWB portion of the story here with Mohamed Sookwa. Don't go anywhere here. Come back to the CWB Association podcast.
The CWB Association is new and improved and focused on you. We offer a free membership with lots of benefits to anyone interested in joining an association that is passionate about welding. We are committed to educating, informing, and connecting our workforce. Gain access to your free digital publication of the Weld magazine, free online training, conferences, and lots of giveaways. Reach out to your local CWB Association chapter today to connect with other welding professionals and share welding as a trade in your community. Build your career, stay informed, and support the Canadian welding industry. Join today and learn more at cwbassociation.org.
And we are back here on the CWB Association podcast. Thanks so much for staying with us during these special Black History Month episodes that we are releasing this year. Today we have Mohamed Sookwa, who has just been telling us about his life coming from Guyana to Canada, Montreal, then getting married in 2 weeks, which I have questions. And then, all of a sudden ending up in the GTA, working all over the place, all types of industries, kind of cutting his teeth all over the place. And in the back of his mind, he had the CWB, which is not my story at all, because I had never, ever thought I'd work for the CWB. And here I am, but you did. You did have it in your mind. So, how did you start navigating yourself towards that goal?
Right. So it's not like where we are today and the fabulous work that the association does and other association and organization. The internet is a very valuable tool for resources and to get ideas and stuff like that. It was never like that, as you know, Max. So I wanted to be a CWB guy, the CSR, the certification representative. At that time, I was calling them inspectors, and mindfully, they are inspectors. But I didn't know how to get there. So what happened was, now I'm working at O'Hara Technology, right? Yeah. Beautiful job, air-conditioned plant, the cleanest plant I've ever worked in. And then I was there for 6 months, Max. They were treating me like really well, good company to work for. Paid me well. It was a little bit of a drive, but again, those things don't bother me too much. But then I saw a job, right? I saw a job by a CWB company. Right? Okay. The company was a CWB certified company. So the first thing is like, okay, that's a perfect opportunity for me to now start exploring the idea of getting this job with CWB. Let me learn about certification and all that stuff, right? So anyway, those days you find those jobs in the papers, right? So you call the guy. The guy said to me, can you weld titanium? And I'm like, I've never welded before, but I can weld stainless steel, aluminum, you name it. He says, oh yeah, come on in. So I went, did the test, they hired me to replace a guy that has been there for 24 years, right? So I became their specialty combination welder, right? And then the next thing happened was there was test day, CWB and TSSA, both.
Okay.
And I had, I was now a specialized TIG welder. right? Like
Right.
I wasn't welding other processes. I hadn't welded flux core since I left school.
Yeah.
Stick, I did a little bit tacking here and there. MIG, yes, I was doing. So the CWB inspector, the CSR comes up and gives me 5 tests, right? Flux core, aluminum, TIG, gas metal arc, stick, and I got lucky, Max. I passed all of them. And,
Must have been a really nice CSR.
no, I guess who the CSR was.
Oh man, this would have been like late.
This is 2007. No, this is 2000. 2000, I'm sorry, 2000.
2000 CSR in the GTA. Doug?
It was
Bruce?
Victor.
Oh,
Andrusani.
Victor Andrusani.
Right.
Good old Victor.
Yeah, and Victor was the first rep that I actually spoke with.
And everyone loves Victor.
Everyone loves Victor.
Yeah.
So but every time Victor comes in, he had to deal with me. Hey, Victor, man, how do I get a job like this? Right?
Yeah.
How do I get a job? And he gave me a little bit of hints and advice, but nothing to really work off, right?
Mm-hmm.
At that time, like I said, I was really a good welder. And then new people that came in, I helped them a lot. Well, I did help them to prepare for the test. And then Victor comes to me and he says, Mo, you don't want this job. You're too much of a nice guy. So that happened. And so the setup here, Max, is it took a lot of work. It took a lot of determination. It took a lot of bugging, if you will, to really get the job at CWB.
Mm-hmm.
So talking to Victor, I met Bruce. Remember Bruce?
Yep. Bruce James.
Bruce James. I met him at one of the conferences.
One of the smartest people you'll ever run into.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
So, talk to Bruce a little bit. He gave me a little bit of tips here and there. But in the meantime, from Montreal in here, I was also continuing my education. I went and did, some drafting courses at CJEP and things like that, right? Trying to prepare myself. I was always working towards something. And then eventually, Craig Martin and Victor Andrusani, the managers used to have a day, go out with the CSR, right? They ended up coming to my company, right? The company that I was working for. And I had seen in one of those CWBA journal, who Craig Martin was.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
He was the regional manager at that time. Right? So Craig, quickly, I found a way to say hello to him and whatever, right? I got his card. Worst mistake he ever made. And that's where it started, man. I mean, I was very determined to get what I wanted and to be part of the CWB, right? That was my goal.
So that first job that you applied for at CWB, was it a CSR job?
Was a CSR, right? So I ended up, I went and did the supervisor course that we offer, and that's when I found out how much I didn't know about standards and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's a great course. I actually think every welder should take that course in the world.
It's an amazing course.
Yeah.
It's an amazing course. So I went back all gung-ho to my company, and I'm like, listen, I want to help. I really want to help improve our welding operation, right? So I spoke to my boss. And he said, it depends on, the VP, whatever. I said, okay. So I went to the VP, who was the owner of the company, and I said, this is what I want. She said, okay, but who's going to weld the titanium? I'm like, I'll do both, right? They didn't see that as working, so it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Then I said, okay, so I enrolled into level 1. I actually changed that job, and I went and took another job at a power. They were making transformers, so they hired me as a lead. So I took that job for about a year, and I didn't like it, so I went back to the old company, and when I took that job, I met a gentleman who works for us right now. Okay. So I wanted now the next step. Okay. So now I'm a supervisor, qualified supervisor. The next step is I need to get my level 1 inspector course, right?
Yeah.
So I bought the modules, 21 or 19 modules at that time. I bought 19 modules. I'm going to self-study and I'm going to, write this exam. And then it went on the shelf for a few years because I was building a basement. So I was doing that. And then I started working in this company. I met this gentleman who works for us today. His name is Ali Tabar. Okay. He's one of our CSRs right now. And brilliant guy. He's got a solid background. I don't know what is in metallurgy and inspection and stuff. He had a big job in Iran and stuff where he came from. And him and I talked, and I said, "Listen, man, what are you doing?" And he told me some stories about his struggles as well. And I said, "I'm considering becoming a welding inspector, and this is what I did." And he's like, "Okay, if I do it, I'm going to get it done in 3 months." And me, I'm on year number 4 or 5. I don't know, right? So Ali was the guy who really motivated me to finish it up. And Ali did complete it in probably less than 3 months.
Yeah.
Right. And so I did that as well. And I got my level 1. And then from there, so I was looking into like moving, out of a welder. And this is where, career pathing and exploring where you can go. I've got about this time, maybe 15 years of welding experience. I'm good at it. I don't want to leave that and start something new. How can I leverage that into something a little bit, on a higher level, right? Engineering or welding engineer was not something that I was considering because, I didn't have enough prerequisites to get into that.
It's a whole pile more schooling. Yeah.
Exactly. So I thought about being a welding instructor, which I would be good at. I thought about being a welding salesman.
Oh, yeah.
And I almost got a job at Air Products to be their industrial specialist. So my job was to, teach a salesman. That didn't work out. So I ended up working with Omniwell. I did a gig for them where I was an instructor for, I think it was Steel Car. Okay. So I went there, did some instructing for them. And then shortly after that, I figured, okay, let's get into some NDT. So I took a course at Mohawk College in LPI, liquid penetrant inspection. And then by that time, right, during that course of time, I was always in contact with CWB. So it came to a point where, I would apply for a job, never hear anything. And then I would call Craig Martin every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks religiously. Max, I kid you not. So every 2 weeks I would call him and I'm saying, okay, I just did this. I got my supervisor, I got my level 1. What is it that I need to do right now? And then he said to me, I remember this very, very vividly. I was in the lunchroom of my company making a phone call to Craig Martin. It was about 11:30 or so, okay? And he said to me, this job requires someone with a strong personality. So I said, okay, there is only one way for you to find out. Why don't you meet with me? And he says, well, I don't have the time. And I said, buddy, all I need is 10 minutes. And he said, okay. And that was the biggest mistake he made. So I met with him and he said, yeah, I can see you being a good fit, whatever. And, from there, we continued until I actually, got hired by CWB.
Yeah. And when you got hired, did you get hired on as full-time CSR right away?
Yeah.
Because sometimes they're part-time,
So I'm glad you asked that because at one point in time, I couldn't get the full-time thing. Now they're saying, okay, you're a good fit, but there's no full-time job. So what I did see was a part-time job, right?
Yeah.
So I applied for it. And then they said to me, we can't give you this because it's going to be a conflict of interest because you're working for a certified company. So right. I said, okay, I know I can do this job. And to prove it to you, I'm going to quit my full-time job. I was making good money. I'm going to quit it and come work for you part-time just to show you that I'll be really good at this job that you're advertising. They couldn't give it to me because they said they couldn't guarantee me hours, right? But it took a few months later, and then the full-time position came up in the Toronto area, and I was interviewed, and yeah, I got the job.
So did you take Vic's job and Vic moved up? How did it work?
No, so Vic moved into the procedures department, I believe. Yes, procedure engineering, right? And then there was another gentleman that they hired. His name was Josh Tom, I believe. And then he was there for 6 months, and then he moved into the international market. So he was traveling internationally, and that position came in open, and I filled that.
And now Craig Martin's the VP of the whole damn thing. So,
Yes.
so you made the right friends.
Yeah, I made the right friends. Craig was, I definitely, had some good conversations with Craig Martin and stuff like that. And, we all sit in the same chapter and all that stuff. So we, in a way, we became friends in a way. So it was nice to see. And that's why, like I said, I never give up, right? I always think that, sometimes you have to create your own opportunities.
Yeah. So, you brought up the chapters. Were you a part of the CWA back then, or even before that, the Welding Institute of Canada, WIC? Were you a part of any of these welding associations before you joined CWB, or did you only start becoming involved after you started working with the CWB?
Right. So after I became the CSR for that area, then I met up Imad Assad. And Imad was I think he was the chair of the chapter at that time. I don't know, whatever, but he was up there in the executive committee, and he invited me to join the CWBA. He says, listen, this is where you can meet a lot of people, you'll learn a lot of stuff. And, Imad is a good salesman, right?
Yeah.
But he was right. So I quickly joined the CWA, attended the meetings, and met a lot of different people, learned a lot of stuff in the CWA meetings. It was great. Build a solid network, right? Networking is always a great thing.
Yeah.
And then eventually, years after that, I became the chair of the Toronto chapter, right?
Yeah.
So the chapter is a great opportunity as well, not only to attend and network and learn, but also for growth. So I was able to grow into that position where now I'm taking on a leadership position, right?
You're learning how to lead people,
Right. And, lead and influence people without authority, right? Volunteering is the hardest thing, right? So how to navigate around that? And I had a great committee. I mean, Craig Martin, Victor, Kristen, Doug Bruce, Imad, was a solid.
That's
and we
strong,
did a lot. Yeah, we did a lot of good things for the Toronto chapter. And I definitely learned that side of it. And that's how I met you, Max, the first time at a CWA conference was it Edmonton, I believe? Yeah, that was the first time you and I met.
I think that's when I did the presentation on Africa.
Maybe
not. That was before.
No, you were new as a chair, but you had all these amazing ideas, and I was new as a chair. So right away, I was like, this is a guy I got to connect with, right? And that's how you and I talked. I mean, it's a long time. It's been a while, so you met a lot of people. I know, so I don't know if you remember that, but
I do remember that.
Yeah, we all had to give our presentation and our updates. And when you came up and you had some fantastic ideas, and I'm like, yep, that'll be a guy I should be bugging.
Yeah, that's probably 10 years ago now. And so how long have you been at the CWB now?
I just finished 17 years, Max.
17 years. So this is by far the longest job you've ever had.
This is by far the longest job, and this is the first time that I've actually got a job where I never thought of looking for another job.
Yeah. And how has the growth gone for you inside of CWB? Coming in as a CSR, that was the job you wanted, but eventually it wasn't the job you had. You don't have that job now. So, the progression, was it Was it on purpose? Did you want to climb, or did you kind of just work your way up organically?
Yeah. Obviously, the intention is always to elevate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I did the CSR role for 6 years. I think I outgrew the role to a certain extent. I mean, like it's one of the best jobs, honestly. But I am sometimes too ambitious
Yeah.
for my own good. So I ended up, traveling and doing the national work where I learned a ton of stuff, and of course I saw a lot of different places, and all because of CWB. I learned the client side, client relationships and all that stuff, handling difficult situations. So a new set of skills that I was getting. But I was thinking, I applied for there was a supervisor opening, and I applied for it. I didn't get it. And then all of a sudden, they opened up this new opportunity where they were going to create a new function called internal training, right? And when I read that, the first thing that came to my mind was, yes,
That's me. Yeah.
No, I didn't know. I did not even think of that.
Yeah.
What I thought of is finally we are going to get someone to, help us technically,
Okay.
because that was the setup.
Yeah.
Right? And then I thought about, hey, I like teaching. I like training. Why couldn't this be me?
Yeah.
Right? But again, the position was so new, they didn't have much information. So the first thing I did is I went to Craig Martin again. I think Craig was, what role was Craig? He was in a different role. But I went to him and I said, hey, tell me about this job. And he told me a little bit about it. And I spoke with Human Resources, Odessa at that time.
Yeah.
I was a generalist, and I spoke to her. She gave me a little bit of info, and then I just applied for it. And there was a lot of people who applied for a job, but I think my edge was one. I was not fully bilingual, but I was able to work in French, if you will.
Okay. Right.
So what I did is I actually, I was interviewed a few times, and in the last interview was a panel interview, and I actually prepared a presentation with a plan and said, this is what it looks like. And then I was chosen. So I became the internal training specialist, is what the role was called. And I took that with, just jumped right into it and just started. There was so much demand of training people that we just started to train. Got a dedicated person. So from there, I developed a mentorship program. Then after 6 months, I was promoted to supervisor of internal training. I've now created a framework for onboarding and training for the CSR, something that is standardized. And then, a few years later on, as it evolved and the model changed for many different times, then, I became the manager of internal training. At that time, I had a couple of people reporting to me, but on a dual level. They were internal trainers to assess, because there was so much demand for training people. And we were getting good uptake, and the results were great. And so I've been in that role now for just over 10 years. And I am really happy, Max, because it became my baby, right? It became something that I thought that I built from the ground up.
Yeah.
And I had so much expectations, when you're ignorant sometimes, you don't know what you put yourself into, and you're an overachiever. You want to do so much stuff, but and you don't have the patience. You want things to happen yesterday, right? So it took a while, but we're in a good position right now. And then recently, I've been my role has been expanded now to more of a corporate level. So now, not only am I going to be working with the certification team, but other business units in the CWB. So yeah, it's been good. Over that time, I'm proud to say that we've created a very solid standard onboarding training program. And to supplement that, we've also created certification programs so that we can demonstrate competencies ongoing competencies, right?
Yeah.
So that has been a big success for us as well. Now, in doing all of that, now I was a welder. Now I'm a welding. I was a welding supervisor qualified, a welding inspector. I'm a level 2. But now I got into training.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So now what do I do? So yeah, I got into training, and then eventually, train courses, programs, and then I did a master's certificate at Schulich University, just to bring credibility and also to learn,
Mm-hmm.
the methodologies and the science about, adult learning and development. So now I have a master's certificate in adult training and development, and I also was able to get my certification as a certified training and development professional through the certification body of Canada, which is I4PL. So you
Mm-hmm.
can see the progression there, right? And it's
Yeah.
never ending, right?
So what are some of the needs? 17 years in this company, I can tell you're not done. I can tell you're not done. So what are some of the things that you still see that, you think that you can contribute to, or that you have maybe on the horizon of you would like to see come to fruition?
Well, it's just building on what we have right now in terms of that training strategy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because learning, upskilling, there is always a need for that, right? The world is moving very fast. Technology, for example, right? As you can see, the way that we as a company, we're growing exponentially, right? So there is a lot of opportunities for me to add value to this organization using my expertise, not only as a learning and development professional, but also, with my solid background in the business, right?
Yeah.
Welding. So I can see that, with my new, and I guess the company has seen that as well. And that's why my role has been expanded now. So now it's about looking at other business units and trying to see where I can leverage my expertise to support them.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's awesome. And what about your role as a mentor? Because you've brought up mentorship a few times, even from being young to now, and as now a kind of a senior leader within the CWB, you have your own whole little department there. That's your baby that you grew, and it's not so little, it's quite a bit. How do you see yourself as a mentor, first of all, as a person of color, and then second of all, as a someone with actual business background in the welding industry, which are kind of two things that CWB doesn't have a lot. There's, I think we're pretty decent on the people of color on the kind of on the bottom tier, but we don't have a lot of it in the management and upper levels. Where do you see yourself being a mentor for that?
So, the beautiful thing about my role and my job is I'm the first person that they meet.
Yeah.
Right. I'm the one who onboards them. Right. And with that, there is a lot of, opportunities for me to share ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and to kind of, in a way, provide them with certain, best practices, tips, ideas for them to navigate, right?
Yeah.
Through it. And I love that about what I do, because I get to see someone grow.
Yeah.
Right. I get new people that comes in, and a lot of them are a lot more educated than I am, but it's new for them, right? So
Yeah.
I'm kind of holding their hands in some ways and kind of steer them through. And at that time, we have a lot of conversations, right? Of what worked for me, and this is the thing about onboarding, right? Mentorship and peer contributions, right? Like it's very important for that framework to be in place and has to be solid, because when a new employee comes into an organization, there's a lot of stress.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of worries, right? And you're
Unknown
working
expectations. Yeah.
unknown expectations, right? And so if you can have someone, and we do a really good job, at that, and we try our best. Of course, there is always opportunities for improvement, which we are always looking at ways to enhance our practices and stuff like that. But yeah, I feel like I'm privileged to be in this position. I know that I talk to these gentlemen and these ladies and whoever comes in as friends, right? And try to make them feel as welcome and comfortable as possible. And then being a CSR, for 6 years, I also have a lot of, tips and experience and things that I can share with
Some
them,
funny
right?
stories
Yeah.
too,
So
probably.
funny, exactly. Yeah, we have a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Yeah.
And how do you feel about the direction of the company? Because, like you said, CWB is growing. Like, I've only been here 3 years. I kind of sort of just flew in like a rocket ship into this job, and now I kind of came in at a time of incredible growth for this company at all levels. The for profit, the not for profit, the association, foundation, everywhere. Everyone's growing. How do you feel about the direction of the company, the affiliations with EWI, the growth? Like, I mean, you've been here long enough. You kind of seen it all.
I've seen it. I've seen a lot in the last 17 plus years. Um, I like the direction, right? I like what we stand for. That's one of the reasons why, I came to CWB, right? It's the purpose, the mission. It's what we stand for. It's what we do, right? And to expand that and to get better at it, right? And encompass not just welding, but joining, right? And then now with this NDT certification, right? And everything. So it's gonna be. I love the idea of a one-stop shop.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I love, and I feel that we have been growing fast, right? And a lot of opportunities for people who really are seeking out opportunities as well. So for someone who's coming into this company, there are opportunities that you can leverage, right? Because the company is growing, right? And if you have the type of skill sets and the willingness, right, the opportunities are there.
How's your connection with your motherland? How do you still have connections to Guyana? Do you go visit you and your wife? Do you take the kids there? What's the cultural, connection that you've been able to maintain?
The culture is, not much is written. Yeah, I still love the Guyanese culture. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we spent 17 years, man. I grew up there, bro. It's it's a beautiful culture. Yeah, so I do have a family there. I have an aunt there. I have nieces and nephews, and their family there. I go back every 2 years or so, right? My wife has her sister and family down there as well. So yeah, I mean, me and my brother and I just bought a small little property a few years ago. So yeah, we're still very, very much in tune there. It's home is this is my home.
Yeah.
But my background and the memories that you have growing up in wherever you were brought up in, it's something to cherish, something to hold on to, something to savor, right? Now I have two cultures, right? I have the Canadian culture and I have the Guyanese culture, and that blend is beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
And how old are your kids now?
My oldest is 28. She's engaged, and then I got twins, a boy and a girl. They're 23.
And any welders?
No, no welders at all. No, there's never really like I've got two girls, so one of them is in kind of while she was studying HR strategies, and then the other one is in psychology. My son is trying to be a social worker. And so, yeah, they have their own path.
They all went in the social sciences, yeah.
Yes.
That's good, because behind every strong welder is a strong psychiatrist. So
hey, that has one.
Because mental health is important. Take care of yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome, buddy. So we're coming up to the end of the interview here. Just a couple more questions just to wrap it up. But, first of all, how do you feel your culture, your background as an immigrant, 17 years old, living in the one bedroom, the struggle, how do you feel it helped shape your life as a Canadian?
Wow, that's a big question. Never thought of it that way.
Mm-hmm.
In every way or form, I had to,
Because
challenges,
for you to say that you were a Canadian and proud,
yeah,
that comes from struggle. You know what I mean?
of course,
So
of
like,
course.
I'd love to hear your take on how that affected who you are now as a person.
I don't know if I can put it into words. I'll try,
Mm-hmm.
but I'll tell you that let's put it this way: um, those challenges, those struggles, the patience, the perseverance, right? It is what has helped me become who I am, not only professionally, right, as a person, as a respected and law-abiding citizen of Canada, um, as a father, as a friend, and if I can say that without those struggles, I don't think I would have been the same person or those challenges that I am right now. I think, those challenges are meant for a reason. They're put there sometimes for a reason, right? If you want to grow, you have to get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
You have to be tested and, go through those experiences and come out as being successful, right? And as a person of color, I mean, you are gonna move to a different country, whether you're a person of color or not. You go into a different culture, a different country. There are going to be challenges. It's how you navigate those, right? For me, my principle is I always try to believe in one thing. There are certain things that are beyond your control, but there is a lot that is within your control. So control what you have control over. Take care of those things. And the rest, well, hey, you can't do really too much about it. Yeah. So when people, I talk about the challenges I had with language and also of color, I laughed it off, right? I realized that that's ignorance. But I also know that I had to work harder and I had to show my value in a different way, my worth, right? Mm-hmm. So, and, I talked to you about how I couldn't keep a job because it was too slow or I couldn't handle this and, whatever. I'm a person who has to work harder than other people, and I know, right? And I think my success is based on those challenges and the hard work that I have to put in. So for you, things may come to you naturally. For me, I've recognized that I'm going to have to put in the work, but that has never stopped me. And I've seen great results with that, right? And it's also to your question, because of that, it's made me into somebody that I'm really happy that I've become, right? Understanding what challenges and hard work is, I now appreciate what I have more, right? Mm-hmm. So, I would say that all of us have strengths and weaknesses, right? And we all have a place that we can in society and how we contribute. So we have to figure out what our strengths are. Understand what our weaknesses are, but build on those strengths, because the strengths will overshadow that, right? Yeah. I think what people look for in someone, when they look for value in someone, they look at, someone with the right attitude, right? Mm-hmm. And the willingness to work, okay, and to go after your dreams or what have you, right? Yeah. I mean, in learning and development, we always say one thing, right? We can train people's skills, but not attitude, right? We've got some brilliant people out there, but they're not hired because of attitude sometimes, right? Yeah. Or they don't move up because of their attitude. And then you have other people, and myself included, who, I'm always in a constant struggle, right? And I have to work harder to get what I see some of my friends just. I'll give you a good example. So one of my the only hobby that I have right now besides working out is disc golf, right?
Okay.
I think
yeah.
you and I, yeah. So disc golfing is something that I found in COVID,
Okay.
right? And it's the same way that I approach disc golf is the way I had approached my career, right? So I got into disc golf at this age, right? And I know that I've seen some of the guys that has natural talent,
Yeah.
but I'm able to compete with them because I put in the work, right?
Right.
So it's the same thing with your career or what have you, your goals. You have to understand that you have to take control of your path, right?
Yeah. No
And
one
you
else
have
will.
to,
Yeah.
nobody else will. You have to create your, in a nutshell, you have to create your own opportunities. So when someone say no to you, you have to figure out a way how that no is going to become yes.
hmm I always tell my staff, no means just not yet.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, no is just not yet. And it's funny you bring up, not being able to teach, certain aspects of social behaviors. And that's something I always used to tell my students is like, I can teach you all how to weld, but I can't teach anyone how to be ambitious. That is something that I don't even know how it works. I don't know where my ambition came from. It's like a burning fire in my belly that I've seemed to have had since I was a baby. And I don't know how to put that into someone else's belly. You know what I mean? But I hope everyone finds it, because I think what happens is that when you find the thing that you love, then the fire starts to burn. And once the fire starts to burn, it never goes out again,
That's great, Max. I know it's almost end of time. I didn't really think that I answered your question really well about how my progression,
Mm-hmm.
But I would say one thing that I'm really happy that I was able to upgrade myself so that I can be a strong contributor to the Canadian industry, the Canadian economy, right?
Yeah.
And I was able to not only come here and suck the life out of, the services that are there, but I'm a strong contributor. And I do, like you, I mean, you talk about your ambitions and where you've come from, right? And I think you and I and all the millions of people out there, we do give back,
Yeah.
right? Look at what we're doing right now with your association and the work that I do and all these people, right? We're giving back to the industry. We're thinking about a new generation. We're thinking about how we can, kind of grow as a nation.
Yeah. All right. So the last question here for you, for somebody that's out there thinking about working for the CWB, and I think you're gonna repeat a couple of things already, but just so that's clear to them, if they are thinking about working for the CWB, you as the onboarding trainer, what are the things that you would love to see them have? Before they send in that resume, that they understand clearly. These are the 1 or 2 or 3 things that they should really think about before they apply and have that interview where you're going to be staring at them and asking them the questions.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I used to be part of the interview process. And the first question I always like to ask is why?
Yeah.
Why do you want to join CWB? And surprisingly enough, a lot of people don't even know what CWB does. They don't do the research, right? They know we're a great company. They see us as the CSRs, but really understanding what CWB is. I'd like you to take some time to think about that, right? And the other thing is understanding that, if you're applying, let's keep one role in specific. So we've got many different roles in the CWB. But if you're applying as a CSR, understand that this is a role where it's like running your own business. So you have to be very organized. You have the flexibility, and you have to make sure that you have, like what Craig Martin said. Now I understood after I joined what strong personality means. You have to be able to develop and maintain relationship. You have to be able to, problem solve, right? Diffuse situation, right? You're the face of the company. So you have to bring those skills. The technical stuff, of course, you need the background in welding and all that stuff, which will help. But the technical stuff you'll be trained to. Come with a passion, right? To succeed, join this great company and make sure that you understand what you're getting into. And that goes for any job. That's the first thing. You said something there. When you choose a job, you got to choose a job that you love. And here's the quote, and I learned this from one of the welders in the field, right? That if you take a job that you love, you'll never work another day of your life.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing,
saying. Yeah. Awesome, Mo. Well, do you have any shout outs or anybody you'd like to say hi to before we wrap this up?
Hello to all my welders out there, man.
Good.
And everyone in the welding industries and everyone who's going to be listening to the podcast. Max, you're doing an amazing job. Shout out to the CWBA, CWB Association, and CWB Group at large.
Awesome, buddy. Well, thank you. I don't think you're going to get in trouble. You might be getting a promotion after this one. You said some nice things there. So
it's all factual.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mohamed, for being a part of this special episode and for being on the show with me today.
Thanks, Max.
Awesome. And for all the people that have been following along, make sure you keep downloading, sharing, and commenting on our podcast. We love the information. We love the feedback. And we love that everyone's following along. I love getting the messages on Instagram. I love the emails that we get in through the company email, info@cwbassociation.org. Catch me on Instagram through either CWB Welding Group or CWB Group Welding or myself, AskMax75. I just got one this morning saying thank you so much for the podcast. And I love that stuff. So keep following along, downloading, and making us thrive with the show, and stay tuned for the next episode.
We hope you enjoy the show.